Welcome to Business Talk, and it's time to talk cryptos again. And we've seen some fresh investment inflows into crypto funds reaching their highest amounts in 3 months recently. European funds leading the momentum, according to CoinDesk. The jump, which was noted by CoinShares, marked a reversal of the recent trend that included 2 straight weeks of outflow. So it's been choppy, but we have seen Bitcoin, the largest cryptocurrency by market cap, rising 14% last week. So that's the biggest weekly gain we've seen since last April. There's definitely something up there. And unless you've been living under a rock, you've clearly heard about Bitcoin, but Ethereum is a different form of cryptocurrency that's nipping at Bitcoin's heels. It's based on a decentralized finance model, or DeFi as it's known, and that's obviously got implications far broader than just for cryptocurrencies. Well, to give us a primer on the crypto space and DeFi, I'm joined by Sean Sanders, CEO and co-founder of Revix. Sean, it's always good to have you on the show talking about cryptos. Let's start talking about decentralized finance, though, because increasingly I'm seeing this DeFi word pop up. There's a big global conference happening in June. And it really presents, as far as I understand it, a fundamental shift from the old financial system. So if you look at DeFi, if you want to get a primer, where's a good place to start? How do you define DeFi?
So, Michael, thanks very much for having me on again. It's great to speak. So DeFi, or open finance as it was called before you had the whole crypto and blockchain craze that came along, was really sort of just automated peer-to-peer finance. That's what it was about, right? You don't need to have central parties sort of sitting in between transactions, whether that's a payment transaction, a brokerage transaction, insurance. We know a model today where you've got centralized intermediaries, whether that's banks, brokers, insurance players, and all the rest. They sit there between you and essentially the product that you're looking for. And essentially what decentralized finance is looking to do is to use blockchain networks and to use decentralization to your advantage, essentially to be able to launch various platforms and programs that replace those traditional financial intermediaries, right? So instead of you having the JSE as you know it today, you've got an online program that acts exactly the same as the JSE, right? Where you can transact with somebody else across the world. So if you're looking at taking out a loan, you could avoid going to a bank and you could essentially approach one of the online programs that would connect you with a bunch of different participants around the world that would be willing to lend a capital to you. So as an example, if you had a really big Bitcoin position or really big Ethereum position, and you didn't want to sell out of that Bitcoin and sell out of that Ethereum, you could lend that using a decentralized protocol or decentralized platform, and you could borrow US dollars. And you're able to earn interest on the Bitcoin or Ethereum that you lock away in this decentralized protocol, and then you pay interest on the US dollars that you take out. So that's really the start of what's happened now with DeFi. And you've seen all these other areas emerge. You've seen the insurance industry really start to grow, where you've got decentralized insurance. So people insuring other people that have never met one another. And this is absolutely fascinating, right? So as a finance geek, I sort of look at this DeFi industry as being essentially the evolution of financial services as we know them today. We've lived in an analog world, right? You used to go to Blockbuster, you used to get DVDs. Today, you stream everything, and you're seeing that exact same evolution now happen in the financial services space. So instead of you going to your bank, waiting for your bank card and doing anything like that, everything can happen online. So it's really, I think, decentralized finance for me is really sort of automated finance without the requirement of having intermediaries.
And if you're going to be basically displacing the banks to an extent, it's got the potential to remove them from the equation. Do you think this is something that's going to, likely face pushback from the incumbents? I mean, no one wants to be voting for their own demise here. Or do you see DeFi kind of rising up, providing this alternative, broader ranging, accessible finance in niche areas and coexisting with banks? I mean, how do you see this evolving?
Yeah, I don't think it'll be an extreme. I think you will see DeFi emerge the way that it's emerging. I mean, it was the top performing crypto sector of 2021. So it outperformed Bitcoin by about 3x last year. And I mean, really, DeFi really came into itself in 2021. I mean, prior to that, it was a couple $1 billion. It ended last year with roughly around $90 billion in sort of total value locked. So, decentralized finance and the sort of the most extreme degree is completely decentralized, where there's no financial intermediaries. And that's actually really difficult to get right. The other end of the spectrum, which is what we've known up until this point in time, which is really centralized finance, is expensive and it's slow, and you're dealing with incumbents and you can't call your bank, and it's very frustrating. So you're probably going to meet somewhere in the middle, I think, over the long term. I mean, banks aren't going to just watch this, now it's $1 billion industry turned to $1 trillion industry and just go, okay, well, we're going to get disrupted. I think banks are looking to get into this space. You're seeing it, I suppose, more overseas than in South Africa, but I think it's only a matter of time. I mean, we're still very early in sort of the DeFi growth phase.
Absolutely. And just doing a bit of reading up in the space as well, because I think what you can do as a retail investor, anyone new, is there's a wealth of good information. There's also some really poor information on the internet. So go and educate yourself. But there's this video by mathematician Grant Sanderson. He really explains very succinctly how Bitcoin actually works. Even if you're not a finance geek, you'll get it. But I came across the role of DAOs, these decentralized autonomous organizations, because I wanted to know who's driving the innovation, who collectively, if something is decentralized, who's actually driving a lot of the innovation that we see that exists on the blockchain. Can you just share a little bit more about these DAOs or these ownerless digital groups?
Yeah, it's quite interesting. I'm actually busy working with the University of Cambridge on launching the first educational philanthropic focused DAO. So I've kind of got into this space. I'm quite passionate about it. So decentralized autonomous organizations are really trying to take either traditional company structures as we know them today, or taking trusts and placing those trusts, or even an endowment really, and placing them on a blockchain. So you could have essentially the contributors of this particular DAO. So that could be like the donors of an endowment or whoever it may be, right? So the beneficiaries or the contributors to a trust. And you just place all the ownership rights into a smart contract, essentially on a blockchain. And what that means is if there's ever a decision that needs to be made, you don't necessarily need to rely on trustees. You could designate a trustee to be part of the DAO, but what you otherwise would have is that you have voting rights, just like, as a shareholder of, say, Apple, or a shareholder of any other sort of listed company, you can vote on various events occurring. And this is really the exciting part, because all of a sudden you've got community ownership of particular DAOs and, I suppose, trusts and all the rest. So this is, I also think, we're right at the early stages of DAOs. I think over the next few years, watch this space. I mean, the Ukrainian DAO that was launched not too long ago, I mean, that's amassed an incredible amount of money, north of $50 million over the last few weeks. And I think you're going to start seeing this happen more and more, because communities want to be able to come together. They want to be able to have a say in where funds are allocated or how certain things are done. So I think we just watch this space across the spectrum. You're going to see in the introduction of more and more DAOs.
Yeah, and it's just fantastic, because it's ripping down the doors of what has been a very elite system and it's democratizing it, it's making it accessible. And I think often you'll have pushback from that system, because it feels like this is a moment where it's losing control. And that comes back to my earlier point. Can these DeFi platforms ever really challenge traditional finance as we know it?
It's not really, and then yes, they definitely can, right? So we've been living through that 1995 odd moment. I'm drawing the comparison now to the internet in crypto, right? So blockchains are clunky, they're expensive. I mean, if you've transacted using the Ethereum blockchain, you see what transaction fees are. I mean, they are very, very high, and that makes them less, I suppose, desirable for everyday users. But Ethereum is going through upgrades. There's a whole bunch of Ethereum killers, if you want to call it that, the likes of Cardano, the likes of Solana. They're coming online. They're growing. They're evolving as platforms. And all of a sudden, the applications that were expensive to use or didn't have a big user base, which, essentially for DeFi is a requirement, you do need a sort of engaged user base to be able to interact with any of these decentralized finance protocols. That all of a sudden becomes possible. And you're starting to see this play out. I mean, you can right now go and take out a lower interest rate based loan from a decentralized finance platform than you could from a South African bank. I mean, sure, the ones in dollars, the ones in rands, but that is something that's accessible right now. You can go to the likes of Uniswap or PancakeSwap. The names of crypto are always bizarre. And you can essentially transact without the requirement of any centralized exchange. You're using in a decentralized exchange and you're transacting with somebody from somewhere else in the world. It could be an institution, it could be a hedge fund, it could be an individual, but you're doing that using a decentralized program, which is absolutely remarkable. So it's just the start. I really do see this as just the beginning, and this will only grow, I think, over time. You've seen essentially the introduction of synthetic shares as well. So the likes of Microsoft, the likes of Amazon, the likes of Nvidia, Netflix, all these shares have been essentially introduced as fractionalized, tokenized shares onto various blockchains. Those can now be traded in some countries via these decentralized exchanges, really. And that's remarkable. All of a sudden, that's essentially stealing market share from the likes of the New York Stock Exchange and all the rest. So don't get me wrong, regulators are coming in for this space because, I mean, gosh, like, of course, you've got all these traditional securities entering the space. The commodities market has definitely been tokenized more and more over the last few years. So we've got PAXG on the Revix platform, which is tokenized gold. That's physical gold. That's just, the legal entitlement is owned through a token. And that's all transactable now via these decentralized platforms. So this is just the start. I really, really do see this as being a much bigger part in the future. It's very exciting.
And as you say, early days of the internet, I think, is a great comparator. I was chatting to the CEO of Renogen a couple of months ago. I think it was two quarters ago. He announced this very novel, effectively, if you know mining, it's like a streaming transaction where you forward sell your ounces that are still in the ground to pre-fund the development of your mine. But what he did is he tokenized access to helium. And that has been a huge success. And we see a huge uptake for that now because there's been a crunch in the helium market. But effectively, no need for an exchange here because you can bypass the intermediates here. And that's why it's disintermediation at the end of the day. Now, I think it's very exciting. The big question is, how can you invest in DeFi? How do you invest in a space that's still so nascent?
That's a good question. And that's exactly the question we at Revix asked ourselves 6 months ago, right? We said, well, this is a space that's up and coming, but buying into some of these projects is really difficult, right? You've got to have accounts across multiple exchanges. You've got to learn how to custody cryptocurrency. You've got to understand sort of what's going on in the decentralized finance market. And you think the crypto market's crazy, you get into this niche sector within the crypto space and you're looking at something even more crazy. So what we did is we went out and we essentially built, just similar to our other bundles that we have, but we've built a DeFi bundle. So you can go and invest in the top 10 largest decentralized finance protocols that exist in the market, the top 10 DeFi cryptocurrencies that exist in the market. And then just like all of our other bundles, this bundle gets automatically reweighted every single month. So you get market weighted exposure to the top 10 largest DeFi cryptocurrencies. They get automatically reweighted. And then I think the beauty of what we're offering as well is that you get 95% of the DeFi market in these top 10 largest DeFi protocols. And you don't have to worry about which ones to buy. So I think it's sort of taking like the S&P 500 like approach to investing in crypto, and that diversification, we believe, certainly in a nascent asset class like the DeFi sector, is probably more important than ever. So you can go out and you can try bet on individual projects. You could go buy Uniswap. You could go and try buy Ethereum. Maybe you want to take sort of a smart contract based approach. We've got a bundle that can provide exposure to that. But really, I think at the end of the day, there are going to be multiple winners in this space. There's not just going to be a single winner that sort of take market share. And our bundles enable you to get exposure really just to that sector within the crypto space.
Absolutely. It's like a venture capital fund approach, 10 investments and maybe you've got 2, 3 at best that really hit it out the park, 4 or 5 that perform and break even, maybe 1 or 2 times return money, 2 that might fail. But overall, you see a really outsized return because of this diversification that these bundles offer. Now, I know you love offering promotions to my audience. Sean, what do you have on offer this month?
Yeah, so we've got essentially a little bit of an incentive to make investing in our DeFi bundle a little sweeter, and that is absolutely 0 buy-in fees from now until early April. So you can head over to our platform, which is www.revix.com. You can sign up for an account. You can make your first investment. If you're already a Revix customer, you can make an investment. You don't need to sign up, obviously, for a new account or enter any promotional code or anything like that. And any investment size into the DeFi bundle is completely fee-free. That could be for 150 Rand, which is the minimum investment amount, all the way through to 10 million Rand, if that's something that tickles your fancy. So yeah, we just really want to make it simple to be able to invest in this DeFi space. We want people to try out sort of the different bundle of products that we have on offer. It's quite interesting to note that you look at sort of this inflation shield bundle that we launched about 3 weeks ago, which is essentially a dynamically reweighted bundle between Bitcoin and gold. The bundle has outperformed both Bitcoin and gold because of the way that it was sort of it was able to allocate between the 2 different products. And the DeFi bundles actually outperformed a lot of the individual constituents of that bundle because of the way that the reweighting works. So this is really the big benefit of these bundles. I think maybe something else just to mention on the Revix platform that a lot of people don't know is that we are not in a crypto exchange. So if you have to come to us, we don't have our own, as we would call it, an order book. We connect to other platforms' order books. And this means that when you're executing a trade, certainly a larger trade, let's say it's over 50,000 Rand to 100,000 Rand plus, Now, if you had to currently go to a crypto exchange and you had to click buy, you're going to experience some market slippage. So you'd probably experience, call it 20 or 30 basis points, so 0.2 to 0.3% slippage. You're going to lose a little bit of money on that trade. Now, with us, we can execute across multiple venues. So this means that the slippage factor is far less, if not zero. So we're able to execute across 5 or 6 different exchanges every time we transact. So this is something that I think, we haven't promoted all that much because we've been building the technology in the background. But now this is something that's live. It benefits our customers. And it's just another reason why, even if you're looking at maybe, say, Bitcoin or Ethereum and just investing in those names, it makes a lot more sense to come to as they would call us, a broker, rather than going to a crypto exchange per se.
It's almost like, that broker getting the best bid offer spread and being able to look around to get that for their clients. That's really interesting. I wasn't aware of that Revix offered that. Fascinating conversation, Sean. And I think certainly, DeFi and the underlying technology of cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin and using the blockchain, I see as this potential to, maybe not remove the banks from the equation, but certainly create a far more transparent, traceable system and to make finance accessible to a broader range of people. It's unsurprising to see why Africa is one of the fastest growing markets for this technology. We embraced mobile money and we're embracing these new technologies that are breaking down the traditional barriers. So it's always a great pleasure to share this primer on DeFi with you here on Business Talk. Take care.